Over the last 2 weeks, a small revolution took place in the Kashmir Valley. People came out in droves, in record numbers, to vote for a new government. People from parts of the region that have shunned and boycotted the electoral process for decades. Men and women in their 40s and 50s who had never cast a vote in their lives. A large number of 18 to 19-year-olds among the 2 lakh Kashmiris who just became eligible to vote. The voters included parents of young boys who've been jailed under strict laws to control terror activities in the region, traders who've seen massive losses in business in the last year, and a huge chunk of the 26,000 registered Kashmiri migrants who live across the country. They all travelled back home to have their fingers inked. On Saturday, the critical Anantnag-Rajouri constituency saw a voter turnout of 53%. Well, it's their highest in 35 years. Overall, across the 6 phases of polls, more than half of Kashmir cast their votes. Also a 35-year record.
It actually shows J&K recording a better turnout than many other states. Say, Bihar, Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh are actually at the bottom of the tally. J&K has done much better.
But voting for many is another form of dissent.
Everybody in the region generally and in this constituency talks about the problems on the ground, the failures of the policies that were implemented here in the last few years, especially after the abrogation of Article 370 and 35A in August 5 and 6, 2019. All of that has galvanized as a movement, and that people see vote as a process to express their anger.
Now, these are the first Lok Sabha elections held after the government on 5th August 2019 revoked the special status or autonomy status granted to Kashmir under Article 370 of the Indian Constitution. Then in 2022, the government redrew the assembly and parliamentary constituencies of J&K in a move which many said was aimed at making inroads into the Union Territory's electorate. Meanwhile, of course, problems in the region persist. Domestic militancy have been replaced by foreign acts of terror. Blanket internet bans have stopped, but localized ones still happen. Electricity bills have doubled. Tourism is up. But the more critical industry of horticulture has been hit hard by easier import rules of fruit, especially apples, and the frequent clogging of a trade route that connects the Kashmir Valley to Jammu. In today's episode of our special election series Polls on My Pod, we analyze the voice of the Kashmiris. What have they voted for? What have they voted against? What are the key contests and the key contestants? What is the role of security agencies and the Election Commission? And of course, what lies ahead in the upcoming assembly elections and the much-promised statehood to Jammu and Kashmir? It's 28th of May. From the Economic Times, I'm Anirban Chaudhary. This is the Morning Brief. Here's my colleague and ET's in-house chronicler of the region, Hakeem Irfan Rashid, telling me his 3 key takeaways from this election.
First and important is that there was no boycott call from any of the separatist organizations, which includes the militant organizations. Nobody gave a boycott call, which has been a tradition since the elections were resumed here after the people took up arms against the government in 1989. The elections didn't happen till 1996, and then when the 1996 elections started, the boycott calls from the conglomerate of the separatist organizations, Hurriyat, came out. The militants would come out with the boycott calls and all. So, but that didn't happen this time. Number 2 is this is the first major election that happened after August 5, 2019. So people were feeling kind of frustrated. They were feeling claustrophobic by not expressing what they want to say, and they're also angry with the bureaucratic system.
So Hakeem, what are people on ground saying?
Everybody in the region generally and in this constituency talks about the problems on the ground, the failures of the policies that were implemented here in the last few years, especially after the abrogation of Article 370.
Hakeem told me that the high voter turnout is actually people voicing their dissent, against the centre.
So in Jammu, essentially, after August 2019, Jammu became the base of the protest against the BJP government and the policies that BJP government enacted. In fact, that the people in Jammu, the traders, the businessmen, and even the common men, they complained about that the BJP is not fulfilling its promises on the ground, be it about the business, be it about the employment, or several other things. And they have said that their dignity has been violated, they have been humiliated by the government, by the decisions of August 5, 2019. And also they have said that this vote is not generally about development and all. This is to express their anger, their resentment, and to put a stamp on their rejection of the decisions of August 5, 2019. And this has been a common thread throughout the length and breadth of Kashmir. When we talk about, for example, in North Kashmir, where Umar Abdullah, former chief minister, is contestant, and the main contestant against him is Sajjad Lone, who has a hometown advantage in that constituency, who was also a former minister. And now there you see that engineer Rashid, who also filed nominations, who he's in jail. He's in Tihar jail currently. He has been a two-time legislator in here, but he is in jail under UAPA charges. So he was a contestant there, and people evoked sympathy for him during the elections. They said that we will vote for him because if our vote only gets him out of the jail, that will be enough for us. So then when we talk about voters in South Kashmir, a lot of them who had never voted for 50 years, for 60 years in their lives, they said that one is that we are not happy with what Delhi is doing. Number two, they also said that they have a lot of complaints. For example, one voter said that my son is in jail, and if this vote helps me to get him out of the jail, I will do that. And some others said that we have seen huge unemployment. Our in the fruit industry is suffering. For example, when we talk about Srinagar, where the government has tried, where the current administration has tried to kind of gloss over the whole city with the idea of smart city and all, but still the residents talk about hike in the electricity fee, non-availability of the employment and other opportunities. People are feeling very, what will I say, they're feeling cheated with what has been done to them over the past 5 years, and especially after the decisions of the 2019. And in fact, we can listen into some of the voters who were in queue in the last phase and what they spoke about, that why they have come out to vote.
मादिकबाल मीर।
अच्छा, आप की एज क्या होगी?
36।
आपने आज पहली बार वोट डाला है?
जी सर।
आपने क्यों पहली बार वोट डाला?
सर आज मैंने पहली बार आज वोट इसलिए डाला क्योंकि आज जब तक ये हुकूमत चल रही थी कि हमारा जितना भी बिज़नेस है वो लॉस हो चुका है, इसलिए मैंने वोट डाला कि हुकूमत कोई ना कोई हमारे हक में बात करे। हमारे कश्मीर की तरफ बात करें, यहाँ के ट्रेड है, जहाँ भी अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट है, उनके लिए बात करे वो। इसलिए हमने आज वोट डाल दिया है 36 साल के बाद।
आप क्या बिजनेस करते हैं?
मैं करता हूँ ड्राई फ्रूट का सर।
उसमें क्या फ़र्क पड़ा है?
उसमें से फ़र्क पड़ चुका है यही कि आज वो चल रहा है 3000 में चल रहा है सर, वो 40 किलो चल रहा है 3000 में, क्योंकि बाहर से जो माल आया है कैलिफोर्निया का चाहे चिल्ली का, वो चल रहा है बाहर, हमारा माल चलता नहीं है बाहर आज।
अच्छा,
इसलिए हमारा बिजनेस क्रैश हो चुका है।
आपका नाम क्या है?
शबीर अहमद भट्ट सर।
आपकी एज क्या है?
28।
आपने पहली बार वोट डाला?
नहीं, अभी तक 2-4 वोट डाले मैंने।
अच्छा, आज क्यों आपने वोट डाला?
आज इसलिए वोट डाला क्योंकि ये वोट डालना ज़रूरी है, क्योंकि हमें पता चला कि कश्मीर में कौन सा जुल्म हो रहा है। बिजली फीस कितना महंगाई उसमें भी हो गई, पहले 100-200 रुपये बिजली फीस था, आज 1700 हो गया। और यहाँ का हर कोई चीज़ ले जा रहे हैं हिंदुस्तान के। ये अगर हमारे ये लीडर बन जाएगी तो आईने में बात हो जाएगी, ताकि हम जवानों को सुरक्षा मिलेगा। यहाँ और भी दबाव है, महंगाई है, गैस का महंगाई है, बाकी महंगाई है, बेरोज़गारी है, ये बाकी चीज़ भी है। अभी चाहिए हमें ये सारी चीज़ चाहिए। तो कश्मीर दिन ब दिन पीछे ही जा रहा है, आगे नहीं, यहाँ कोई बात ही नहीं कर रहा है। इसलिए इस बार जो ये लीडर उठे, तो हम दुआ करते कि ये जीते, आगे हमारी बात करे, ताकि हमें भी कोई फ़ायदा मिले।
I haven't voted yet, but will. I will vote, but there should be some mercy on my son, who has been arrested. He was arrested by the army. It wouldn't do any harm to release him.
To be sure, the dissatisfaction of the people comes despite the government's claims and announcements of heavy investments and incentives for the Union Territory. In 2021, the government announced a central sector scheme worth over 28,000 crore rupees to promote industrial activity in the region. According to responses to questions in the parliament, the government's investments to promote industry totaled over 2,079 crore rupees in 2023 compared to just 296 crore rupees in 2019. So, who are these people's hopes pinned on? Who are the top candidates? Which are the exciting contests? Here's Hakeem.
So this is a very high stake election for all the contestants. For example, in Kashmir, two chief ministers are fighting this Lok Sabha elections. He is fighting from Anantnag Rajouri parliamentary constituency, and Umar Abdullah is fighting from Baramulla of North Kashmir. You have to see that when both of these people, including some other people, were arrested after August 5, 2019 and detained for over a year by the administration in wake of the abrogation of Article 70, people didn't come out to protest in support of them or in solidarity. So this is their time to prove that people are still with them. They have an influence in the region, and people are not happy with what happened here on August 5, 2019. One is that, for example, we have people like Sajad Loan, a former minister in the PDP BJP government. He has to prove a point that he is from Kupwara region in northern Kashmir, and people are with him. So in South Kashmir, Mia Altaf, whose family has never lost an election since 1967 in Ganderbal area, which is their native region, he has to prove a point that he is still relevant, and he's a very influential tribal leader. He has to reassert his influence in the tribal community. In Srinagar parliamentary constituency, we have two youngsters, one from Aga Ruhullah from National Conference, who was vocal critique of Delhi since August 5, 2019. He even had disagreements with his own party, National Conference, for a good couple of years. So essentially, he has to prove to Delhi that what he was speaking in the last 5 years is relevant on the ground, and people are supporting him. And for Wahid Para of People's Democratic Party, who is fighting these elections, he was in jail for over 2 years, I think around 3 years, under the UAPA charges. So he has to prove to Delhi. He has termed this election as a referendum. He has to prove to Delhi that, listen, I was right, you are wrong. I still believe in democratic process. In Jammu, for example, Union Minister Jitendra Singh has to prove that there is no anti-incumbency. People are still with BJP in Jammu. So overall, a high-stake election where all the high-profile people have come out and they want to prove a point to within their own electorate and to Delhi as well.
Now, BJP has decided not to field its own candidates, but rather to back proxies such as Apni Party, among others. Now, the freshly redrawn constituency of Anantnag Rajouri is important for the BJP as it is trying to woo Pahadi voters, said Hakeem. But is all of this working?
When we say about their own workers and supporters, they are not happy. They said that we should have fielded candidates. When Home Minister Amit Shah came here, I think last week or some days back, so they have expressed that resentment. They said that we should have fielded candidates because it looks like we have retreated from what essentially we stood for in Kashmir in the last 5 years.
The elections in the valley this time were largely peaceful thanks to prolonged efforts of security forces. Indeed, according to government data, terrorist-initiated incidents in the valley decreased from 228 in calendar year 2018 to just 43 in the first 11 months of 2023. Here's my colleague and ET's editor of internal affairs, Rahul Tripathi.
Due to crackdown by the security forces in the past 5 years, say from 2019 to 2024 now, the incidents of violence have been an all-time low. If you look at the historical data, if you compare it with since 2000, when the incidents were used to be like really high and curfew was to be imposed and there were no elections, there was no turnout, and militants used to kill anybody who is participating in elections, and they used to issue hartal calendars that this place will be under hartal, and all that had stopped.
Rahul, can you elaborate a bit? What are the steps that the security agencies have taken?
It has been spread over past few years when the Article 370 was removed and more security forces were deployed. In fact, it was one of the most guarded region in the area. There have been like multiple pronged strategy to bring down the incident of violence other than deploying forces, carrying out intel-led counter operations, identifying the overground workers and putting them behind bars. then investigations by the National Investigation Agency against the separatists, banning of several organizations which were actively promoting the separatist ideology in the valley. Recently, during the election, a former Sarpanch Ejaz Sheikh was killed by militants in Sopian in what seems to be a retaliation to a high number of voter turnouts in Jammu and Kashmir elections. Same day, I think in another incident, two people from Jaipur who were tourists were injured after the terrorist opened fire in Anantnag. And for the ongoing elections, the security forces have made elaborate plans so that such incident doesn't occur. Security is being provided to those contesting election, at the same time carrying out intel-based operation against militants and overground workers helping terrorists. The problem, however, has been the Punch and Rajouri axis in Jammu and Kashmir, which has emerged as one of the trickiest regions where security forces in the past three to 4 years have suffered highest casualties in militant attacks as well as during counter-terror operations.
Nevertheless, the security concerns have been largely manageable. Also, this time there's been a significant markup in efforts and participation from India's Election Commission to ensure free and fair elections in the valley. Here's my other colleague, ET's senior editor, Anubhuti Vishnoi.
What I will say is that, there's been a series of incremental steps, and not today, not 3 months before, it's happened over the years, and especially the last 2, 3 years after delimitation has been done. Please remember, since 2019, the electoral roll in J&K was not revised, so that had to be revised. All that was done. It took a lot of effort to go to ground, enumerate voters again. There was a lot of outreach at the ground level by the block level officers. So I think that set the pace for this election. What we are seeing now, when you see people turn out, it started from there when the electoral roll was being revised, door to door enumeration of voters. So you have a 10.19% increase in the registered voters in J&K after, when we look at after abrogation of Article 370 and delimitation. So all that effort started with the electoral roll, dispelling a lot of suspicion around the electoral roll. A lot of work was done by the Election Commission of India here, monitoring things on ground with the chief electoral officer in J&K, the block level officers. A lot of confidence building had to be done on that. That's what I'm saying. It's a slower process than what we see now. It has happened over time. So that was one. And then simultaneously a voter awareness drive, or what the EC in EC parlance it's called sweep activities are called. They went to colleges, schools, trying to convince people about the need to vote, the need to participate, the importance of voting and elections. But the whole feeling, I think, gradually percolated through that if you do vote, you will be heard. It's a transparent process, EVM, VVPAT, everything. I think again and again, there was a lot of reinforcement and repetition of the importance of this process and the transparency of this process.
So, Anubhuti, given the fact that Kashmir has a history of rigged elections, what did the EC do differently this time?
What the election commission this time did differently was they were very clear with the armed forces also that security has to be there. The dynamics of JNK require high deployment, but it has to be done in a non intrusive manner, that you do not need to be visible. And so the idea was there has to be an attitudinal shift. You facilitate, make it easier. So more judicious deployment, I would say, of forces. A very fine balance had to be maintained, that you facilitate as far as you can, and don't be out there. And a sense of oppression should not be there, which I think weighs down psychologically a lot in such areas, or in even in LWE areas, where now the commission has this sustained campaign to bring in a non-intrusive security parameter in place. Also, the other change you would see is processions and rallies has been a major problem point in JNK, because the fears of stone pelting or violence or unrest of any kind have been seen also in the past, and that was a worry factor for the security forces. That was also, we gathered, discussed at length, and understood how this must be addressed. Political parties obviously argue, and rightly so, that unless people come to processions and rallies and participate, how is it, you know, a true election or a true democratic expression of voters' rights and interest? So that is something which was taken on board, and the commission said that we have to try and facilitate as many people as can join processions and rallies unless there is very good reason
Understood.
to stop them. So this was done now. This is all in an unobtrusive manner, in a silent fashion.
So, Anubhuti, what has been the impact of delimitation?
So that has also changed electoral dynamics considerably in JNK, both electoral and political dynamics, which are at play now. And we will fully know once the election is completed. But one thing is clear, that regardless of how the constituencies have been drawn up, people are willing to come out. You saw that in Srinagar, which was again, there was delimitation there. We've seen that in Baramulla, both have seen new parts added to their constituencies. And now today is a test case when you have Anant Nag and Rajouri, where the Pir Panjal slicing through two areas have come together as a constituency, will have big electoral impact. The delimitation, of course, as we talked about, did lead to renewed voter enumeration, and you also got the migrant population come in and participate more actively. By migrant population, I mean the migrating Gujjars and Bakarwals, who often miss the election window. So this time, with their enumeration clearly and constituencies also earmarked for them, I think that is going to have a big impact also in turnout, and greater participation will be there.
Please note that we recorded Anubhuti before the sixth phase, and of course, her estimates were spot on. So, what lies ahead? Well, the upcoming assembly elections and the much promised statehood to Jammu and Kashmir. Here's Rahul again.
So Supreme Court has given center time till September 30th, 2024 to hold assembly election. The central government is of the view that once the elections are over, once the general elections are over, they will sit together and find out ways to hold assembly elections. This assembly election will be of union territory, which will possibly be for a period of 5 years. During that 5 years, if everything goes well, the center, with in consultation with the UT and the elected representatives of the Jammu and Kashmir Union Territory, decide on the restoration of statehood. I don't see it will happen immediately within 1 year, but it is possible after first year if the security situation, if the political situation remains stable.
So, the people of Kashmir have spoken up after a long time. In this instance, not through protests and stone pelting that they are usually accused of, but by exercising their right to franchise. How strong and significant is the collective might of their own voices in restoring the valley's fortunes is something that will be clear only in the next few months. That's it for today. You were listening to this episode on the Morning Brief Special Election Series Polls on My Pod. It was produced by Vinay Joshi and sound designed by Amrit Reggie. The Morning Brief drops every Tuesday to Friday on a listening platform of your choice. Keep listening, thank you, and have a nice week.